it's Connie from FAFF Designs. Welcome to the Dixie Belle YouTube channel. I am one of your brand ambassadors and I'm going to make over this sideboard that you can see behind me. It didn't start out like this. It was actually a previously painted project which I've had for some time. Nobody wanted to buy it, so I thought I'd give it a little bit of a colourful makeover instead. Like I mentioned before, this has previously been painted by myself, so there's no prep work and I am absolutely down for that. So you can see my helpful assistant to the right there is just giving me a hand applying a base coat of daffodil in the Terra clay paint range, and she left me to do the second coat on my own. So this has had 2 coats of daffodil in the Terra clay paint range. Next, I sealed that coat of yellow in with clear coat flat, and that is because Terra clay paint is really easily activated by water, and I wanted to do a blended effect over the top of the yellow. Once that had dried down after a couple of hours, I then went in with the colour Marigold, and I'm going to create an ombre effect. So Marigold is going to be the colour that's on the top half of this sideboard, and then that's kind of going to blend into the second colour, which is going to be a pink colour called Bougainvillea, and I'm going to start sort of lower down with that colour because it is a very strong pigmented colour. I don't want it to overpower the orange, and I also want the yellow to be apparent through it as well. So I'm just taking that colour down sort of a little bit lower than halfway and then blending it upwards into the Marigold. So the amazing thing about Terra clay paint is that it is reactivated with water very, very easily, even if you've allowed this to dry down. So if you struggle with blending colours, or if you struggled in the past with blending colours together, this might be the paint for you. So you can literally sort of blend this together, reactivate it. You can see me spritzing the water over the paint. Even though this has dried down, you can spritz a little bit of water and it's really easily reactivated, which means blending is super easy and you can play around with it until you get the effect that you want. I applied the second coat in a really similar kind of way and just made sure that it was kind of how I wanted it to look. So I almost wanted a little bit of a drippy look to this ombre, and I wanted some of that yellow to be quite apparent, especially on the door panels. So I'm just making sure that the second coat is building up that coverage and getting the paint to blend how I wanted it to. Once I had the ombre look how I wanted it, I then wet distressed areas. So wet distressing is just a form of distressing. It just gives you a really soft kind of look, and I'm spraying water directly onto the surface, but you can just use a wet rag if you prefer, and all you need to do is just rub away at the areas that you want to distress. This paint wet distresses like an absolute charm because it is easily reactivated with water. But just remember that if you don't seal in your base layer, then what you'll distress down to is bare wood, which is absolutely fine if you want that look. But in this case, I wanted it to be the base coat to be the yellow, and I didn't want to distress down to the wood. Hence the reason that I sealed the yellow colour in one of my earlier steps. So I'm just using that wet distressing technique to reveal that yellow underneath. I'm just going around areas around the drawers and around the cupboard doors as well. Terra clay paint needs sealing. It's really porous, and as I've shown, it's very easily reactivated with water until it's sealed. I'm using gator hide with a synthetic brush to seal this because the ombre is in a position where I'm really pleased with it. It's the look that I was going for, and you can see that as you seal it, it just brings the vibrancy of all those colours back to life. Once that dried, I then went in with a Van Dyke brown glaze. This is just going to tone the colours down and because I've got quite a lot going on, it's just going to kind of bring it all together, and it's also going to emphasize some of the detail on the sideboard. Because I'd already sealed this with gator hide, it's not going to soak into the paint, so I'm just applying it liberally onto the surface, wiping the excess off with a rag, and you can use a spritz of water if you do want to remove a little bit more, and just leave it in the areas where you want that kind of detail to pop. I wanted to add some floral detail on the doors, so I cut out a couple of pieces from the Buds and Branches transfer that had no colour on them, and added those onto the door panels and sealed that with clear coat in satin. And the awesome thing about these transfers, you can add your own colour. Just make sure you have sealed that transfer down on the surface first. I'm using the colour Moonbeam, which is a really pretty white, and I did add a little bit of that bougainvillea colour as well, just to give a little pop of pink, and I also added some daffodil right in the very centre of the flowers. This paint is super easy to create these kind of effects with. Believe me when I say I'm definitely no artist. I am using the transfer as obviously my kind of template, and I'm just essentially colouring it in. But I'm just astounded at the way that these paints kind of just look so artistic and are really easy to use and super fun. So because obviously I had then used Terra paint over the doors and over the transfer, I just wanted to give the whole thing another coat of clear coat. I actually used clear coat in satin. Again, I didn't use gator hide because that's not advised to use with transfers. So I'm using satin to just go over the whole thing once again and lock in all of the detail effects and glazing that I'd done. Again, I just couldn't leave it alone. I went in with Best Dang Wax in black, just around the recesses of the doors and also around the drawer edges, just to kind of give a little bit of dimension. Final step, I added some bronze gilding wax to the handles, and this is just going to basically emphasize them and add a little bit of dimension to them as well. Here's the finished thing. I just kept it super simple with the staging and emphasised that little pop of pink with a throw hanging on the wall and some flowers out of the garden. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you liked how it turned out. I definitely did. Nice to do something a little bit different out of my comfort zone. And make sure you are subscribing to the Dixie Belle YouTube channel.